So today we are talking about a grimdark book that you've probably never heard of, but really need to get on your TBR. And that book is Priest of Bones by Peter McLean. This is a book that's often compared to The Lies of Locke Lamora, but I've never read that book, so I can't make a comparison like that on my own. But what I do know is that Priest of Bones has gangsters, espionage, political intrigue, and enough detail in the fight scenes to make my little grimdark heart very happy. If you hear sniffles, I have my 2 foster dogs with me. They would not shut up when I put them in the crate, so they're going to hang out with me, even though one of them had an accident in the library and now it smells really, really bad. The enzyme cleaner actually smells worse than the pee did, and I'm actually kind of disappointed. This story follows our dear protagonist, Thomas Piety, a man who has just returned from war with all his people, and he's ready to get back to what his life was like before he left. Before he was a soldier, he was a businessman, which is a very nice way to say gangster. He owned taverns, gaming dens, and places where one could purchase company for the evening. And when he returns to his hometown of Ellenburg, he discovers that all of his businesses have been taken over by a rival group. And that does not sit well with him, and so he endeavors to take everything back and show them who is boss. After all his war buddies that followed him back were promised jobs, and they're used to this variety of hard work. So they're happy to oblige him and help him take everything back. Back in the day, Thomas did some moonlighting for the Queen's Men, who are basically like a secret order of knights who do all this espionage stuff on behalf of the Queen, to help her stay in power and to be her eyes and ears around the country. They made him an offer that he couldn't refuse because, he likes existing, and they're calling upon him again because his interests and their interests tend to overlap a bit. Now, during his days as a conscript in the army, each unit had a priest, and unfortunately they lost theirs, so Thomas decided that he was going to be the priest for them. He was going to hear confession, he was going to represent Our Lady, who is a goddess of soldiers who doesn't actually listen to their prayers or care. She just accepts them and accepts them when they cross the river into her world. Though some of the stuff that his men confess to him is so vile that he ends up dispensing justice on his own, with the help of 2 swords that he calls the Weeping Women. This is a very dark book, but the hero has a moral compass that I think most readers can agree with and are comfortable reading. In the story, the main character's side might have won the war, but everything is depressed and broken down, and there's a lot of people that are starving and hurting, and it's just not a good thing to come home to. Thomas does a really good job of trying to take care of the people that live in his section of town, the one he controls. He takes taxes from them, and in turn provides them with protection, gives them food and employment, and tries to make sure that their lives are pretty decent by the standards of this town. He takes his job very seriously, and he knows that it helps him gain power because if people are okay with him, then they're going to let him do whatever he wants. And I might have already said this before, but the story takes place in a town called Ellenburg, and it's sort of an industrial city that's out in the countryside. It's in the provinces, far away from Danzburg, which is the capital of this country. And this is a city that has some well-off people, but they're not like rich and powerful. Most of the people in the city are involved in trade. You have people involved in various different industries, and it has a very industrial revolution sort of feel to it. Think Gotham, but the 18th or 19th centuries and much less prosperous. This society, or at least Thomas and his people, seem to be pretty accepting of people of different backgrounds from different countries and people who are LGBTQ+. There's some main characters in here that are LGBTQ+, and it's really nice to have that representation. Thomas is a scary guy, but I think his moral compass would pass the sniff test by today's standards. I know sometimes in grimdark there can be some things that are really questionable or things that make people feel uncomfortable reading it. And even though there are some of those things in there, you don't have main characters that are just being bad for the sake of being bad. One of the major themes in this book is power. How to gain it, how to keep it, and how not to lose it. Which is basically keeping it, but whatever. This book is also narrated by Thomas, so it leans heavily on his perspective, and when he talks about a character that he really likes or respects, it makes me as a reader really like or respect that character. And I think that helps bring more of the side characters out of their shell and really lets us get the most out of them. This book kind of reads like you're the wallflower at a party, and Thomas is the guy who's trying to get you to come out of your shell and be part of the group. Thomas has several principles that he falls back on and talks about repeatedly throughout this book. One is the right man for the right job, by which he means the right person for the right job. He doesn't care about your background. He doesn't care about if he likes you as a person or not. If you are somebody who can do a specific job better than other people, he's going to use you. Now, he does do this because he uses people as a means to an end, but at the same time, if you want the opportunity to be able to do something for him, he's happy to give it to you. 2, there are just some things that he says that he can't let pass. And this is because he has a strong moral compass and just lines that he will not cross. And he does some pretty terrible stuff to the people that do cross them. And in some ways, it makes you feel really good as a reader because you feel like justice has been served. He also has clear boundaries and knows exactly what he can and cannot do, and also maintain power. He has to treat his brother a certain way so that people don't think that he's weak, but he also doesn't want to, hurt his brother too bad because then his aunt would be mad. And there's actually a scene where his aunt calls him out and says that Thomas is acting like he's the law. And Thomas does act like he's the law and everything. It actually goes into more themes about power and how the person who has power is more important and their opinion matters more than people who don't have power, but we'll get into that a little bit later. For now, let's just go with Thomas thinks that his way is the best way. And his final thought on power is that good choices don't always exist, so you make the best choice that you can. Thomas only helps the Queen's men because he has to, and he doesn't really consider that to be a choice at all, even though technically he was given a choice. The choice between existing and not. He knows it's dangerous. He doesn't like being anybody's pawn, but he does like the gold that he gets for cooperating with them, and it helps him take care of the people on his streets. And I guess because the Queen's men fund all his stuff and all the charitable things that he wants to do, he doesn't really have a choice in that way on whether or not he wants to help them or not. Because not only does he get to survive, but he also gets to help his community thrive. Another theme is that names and the way people see things are very, very important. There's one character named Billy the Boy, and he's this 12-year-old kid that they found on the battlefield. And if this kid says something's going to happen, it does happen. Thomas thinks that Billy is blessed by Our Lady, but there's another character who thinks that he is possessed by something evil. Thomas knows that it's really important for the people that surround Billy the Boy to not be afraid of him and to consider his gifts a blessing instead of some sort of curse or possession. This is because he doesn't want anybody to get scared, think it's witchcraft or something, and then hurt Billy. Thomas himself admits that he doesn't really know what the difference is, but he knows that the distinction is important. And then probably one of my favorite themes in this story is what is a government? Thomas collects taxes, he provides protection, and what he says goes. So what makes him different than maybe the governor of Ellenburg or the Queen? I don't know. Maybe just how much influence they have, how wide their area is. Thomas's aunt at one point does say that he took a bunch of businessmen and turned them into soldiers. And in some ways that's correct because he's using his men to take back all his businesses. Things are getting much more violent and fast, and it's not so much just intimidating people anymore. It's actually using force to enforce your will. And the parallels between organized crime and how the local and national government works in this story is pretty much the same thing. And it just made me think a lot harder about it. And it's something that I probably want to go back and read some nonfiction books on. Because I'm sure that stuff like this has happened in the real world, right? After all, peace is just the absence of conflict. Now, here are some of my most memorable bits, and I'm not going to go into spoilers here, but these sort of give you the feel of what this book is about, and I think you're going to enjoy them too. Early on in the book, Thomas talks about how a priest's job is to listen and lead people, and how he doesn't necessarily have to care for them. And I thought that was hilarious because usually leaders in stories are supposed to care about their people, they're supposed to be deeply invested, when actually, no, they just want to deal with them as little as possible to make sure that the peace is kept and then move on with their lives. Thomas is very invested in being a leader and making sure that order is maintained. And in some ways, he takes the old question of, is it better to be feared or to be loved, and just says both and goes with it. And I think to some extent that's true, and it makes me want to reread The Prince. I think it's hilarious that Thomas has to basically move his money that he gets from the Queen's men through his gambling dens, because if anybody saw how much gold he had, as opposed to how much copper or silver money he has, they would ask a lot of questions. And the common people of Ellenburg would not be happy that he is working for the King's men. So instead of moving the money in a certain way to make sure that you don't pay taxes on it, he is moving it in a way so that people don't find out where it came from. And I think it's hilarious that the tables have turned like that in this book. Especially since, the people that he's scared of finding out are the ones who directly benefit from this money coming in. But I mean, when the masses have torches and pitchforks, what are you gonna do? I need to finish writing my discussion for the sequel to this book, which is Priest of Lies. But this is where I'm going to end it today. I highly suggest that you pick up this book. It is fantastic. The narrator in the audiobook also did a fantastic job, but he's only there for the first 2 books. And if you like what I do, please hit the subscribe button and join the Cap Nation. We'd love to have you. I post bookish videos whenever I can get around to it because I am a busy adult with many important things to do. Like, share, subscribe on all your social media, and if you think that I suck at this, leave a comment down below and I will try to suck better next time. Bye.